Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Simplify Data Protection for Workloads on AWS. This event is presented in partnership with Druva and produced by Actual Tech Media. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. We've got a great event lined up for you today. This is a hot topic, data protection, cloud computing, talking about AWS. We want this to be an educational event, and we encourage your questions. We'll be taking questions throughout the event, and we encourage you to use the questions box there in your audience console. Experts from Druva are standing by to answer your questions and help you with your challenges around data protection. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's webinar. Besides questions, I also want you to know that we have a number of handouts there in the Handouts tab. You can download those resources. There are 2 PDF assets, how to add disaster recovery to your AWS environment, and 8 tips to simplify AWS backup and recovery. So make sure that you download those before you go, because they won't be as readily accessible after today's webinar. We also have a prize that we'll be announcing at the end of the webinar. It's an Amazon $300 gift card. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms and conditions can be found there in the Handouts tab. And then new this year, we're doing a special Best Question prize on our events, where we'll be also announcing a $50 Amazon gift card for the best question during the event. That prize winner will be announced or contacted after the webinar, but keep those questions coming in throughout the event. Like I said, experts from Druva are ready to help. We want this to be educational. All of us at Actual Tech Media are former IT pros ourselves, so we know how tough life can be out in the world of enterprise IT. So keep those questions coming, and we are here to help. And now I'm excited to introduce you to our expert presenters. Welcome, Mr. Rono Jacob, Director of Product Management at Druva, and special guest, Mr. Jonathan Nolasco, Cloud Architect at Life Miles. Rono, Jonathan, thank you so much for being on the event today. Take it away.
For this session, we're going to look at how to simplify data protection for your AWS environments. On the agenda, we'll start by looking at the key industry trends and the challenges that we see when it comes to data protection. We'll then have a Druva customer, Life Miles, come and share with us their experience of their adoption of the AWS environments and how they went about setting up an effective data protection solution. We'll then dive from there deeper into Druva's solution and look at how Druva's solution can help simplify your data protection requirements when it comes to your AWS environments. All right, so to introduce myself, I'm Rono Jacob. I'm the head of product management at Druva. Joining me today is Jonathan Nolasco, who is the cloud architect at Life Miles, and Jonathan will be sharing with us a Life Miles implementation to AWS. So to begin with, if you look at enterprise organizations today, and you look at the environment that they have out there, cloud is more or less an established norm, whether organizations are into the early journey of their cloud, or they're into the more mature phases of their cloud, where they're looking to establish more better practices and adoptions of their cloud environment. And what we are seeing with this trend is, as organizations look to set up more workloads, we're seeing more and more workloads getting created in the cloud. And as this increase in environment of adoption happens in the cloud, what's also coming alternate or complementary to this capability is the growing data in the customer's environments. You're now starting to see more and more of the customer's data or the organization's data starting to grow in cloud. And with that, what we're starting to see are some of the risks and challenges that organizations need to keep in mind when they look at their cloud environment. So what are these risks and challenges that organizations need to take care of when they're looking at their environment in cloud, especially when they're looking at the data that they have there? The first one is to safeguard against any malware issues. You'll probably be encountering cybersecurity challenges. You could have insider issues where an employee issue could be caused. A disgruntled employee could lead to some kind of an issue with your environment. Cloud environments itself are not immune to outages, and any form of an outage could also impact your environment, which is running in cloud. The last and the most important one, which we also see, is just because you're running an environment in cloud, accidental deletions, human errors are very much still possible in the cloud. And any of these areas could cause a significant impact to your environment, leading to your business being severely impacted. And these are just some of the risks and threats that still exist in the cloud. So, as one of the analysts reported, if you were to look at the difference between your cloud environments and your on-premise environments, do you need to have an alternate strategy when it comes to data protection? The analyst notes and says, your cloud environments also need an effective data protection. Just because you've moved to the cloud, you're not immune to it. A question that I often hear customers bring up to me is, well, I'm running my environment in AWS. AWS offers all the SLAs. There's this well-architected framework. They guarantee the services that are made available. So what responsibility do I have? What do I really need to do from a data protection perspective? And to answer that question, what I often point my customers to is to the AWS shared responsibility model, where AWS outlines saying the security of the cloud in terms of the underlying infrastructure, in terms of ensuring that the services are available, safeguarding the data centers, all of those responsibilities lie with AWS. However, if you were to set up an AWS environment, put in your data in it, set management controls around it, then safeguarding those data that's there, ensuring that your management controls are right and your environment is secure, making sure that the data out there is protected. All of those responsibilities are on you as a customer, and this is a very important factor that often customers ask, saying, okay, so now the responsibility when it comes to data protection is also on me. And that basically means, if you have other contractual obligations, then you are equally responsible for your environment, for your data running in the cloud. So what are the data challenges that we see when you look at when you look to solve in the cloud? You have your AWS environment. What are the challenges that are out there? The first, as we talked about, is data protection. The ability to safeguard your data, ensuring that in event of something going wrong, you have the way to go back and recover your data, point-in-time copies of your data, and ensure that your business is up and running. The second is, when you look at your environment and the data that's there, if you operate in a regulated industry, you have a corporate compliance, or for that matter, your customer contracts obligations stipulate that you hold the data for longer term purposes, then you have to have those same considerations also for the data that you have in the cloud environment. The third one that emerges with the cloud side of adoption is with a lot of flexibility and availability of resources. What you start to see is teams initially start setting up small environments with probably a couple of accounts, few resources. But over time, your environment starts to scale up. And with the scale where you have different teams coming on board, setting up different accounts, setting up different resources, using different services, putting in a lot of data into it, scale starts to become a challenge. And that's something that, as your organization expands, it's something that you start to see more prominently from a scale perspective that you need to also look into. The last one that we see is cost. As you move to the cloud, a fundamental shift that we see when you move to the cloud is the subscription-based model, where you pay for everything as you go, which basically means, if you're not taking care of the cost of running resources, you have users creating point-in-time copies and leaving them around, you're not having effective controls to safeguard and make sure that the data which is not required is deleted, you're actually going to end up paying costs for all of those aspects. And it's these four pillars of areas that we see as fundamental areas or challenges for those who have data in the cloud that they need to be looking to solve for. So when we look at it from a Druva's perspective, what are the areas that we have looked at from a solution perspective to go and address? The first is around backup and recovery, looking at the ability to look at your resources, ensure that there's a way to take point-in-time copies, you can recover the data when you want to do it, and simplifying the operations of restore. Whether it's you're losing a volume and you want to bring back the volume, or for that matter, you have a database, you want to recover last copy of the database, having that capability. The second one is business continuity. As you move your environment to the cloud, you also need to ensure that you have a business continuity to safeguard against disaster recovery, disasters that may strike, and you having a secondary site, having disaster recovery plans to easily ensure that in event of a disaster, you can move and have a plan to execute on is also an area that we look at from a Druva solution perspective. The last area is around archival and compliance. And as I was mentioning, when it comes to holding data for longer term purposes, ensuring you have an effective way to store that data for longer term purposes and make it available should you need the data to be brought back. Those are the capabilities we look from a Druva solution perspective. With that, I would like to invite Jonathan to talk us through LifeMile's journey to the cloud and share more details about LifeMile's implementation.
Thank you, Rano. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Nolasco. I'm currently the cloud architect at LifeMiles, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys today. Let's talk a little bit about our business. LifeMiles is a company based out of El Salvador. It's usually known as the loyalty reward program for the airline Avianca, which is a Colombian airline. Together with more than 2,000 retail, travel, and finance partners, LifeMiles incentivizes and rewards the loyalty of its customers. What are some of the data management challenges that LifeMiles has faced with AWS? Well, to set the context right, let's move back to the year 2017. There were two major changes going on at LifeMiles, one of them being a business decision to split the company legally and physically. So Avianca and LifeMiles had to part ways. Even in buildings, right? So we were seeing important tasks such as physical infrastructure, and also moving our systems away from Avianca's data center over to our own solution, right? In this case, we decided to move to AWS cloud. So we had this need to protect the new AWS infrastructure. Mostly at the beginning, we had a lot of EC2 instances and RDS instances that we needed to protect, like they were directly migrated to the cloud. And the second change that we were facing is our most critical system, our core system, where all of these customer transactions, customer information, and partner interactions happen, was being also migrated to a new platform. So our hands were really hands-on, and we had little time to invest in other tasks. So we definitely needed to simplify day-to-day protection. For our engineers and administrators, they didn't have enough time to be taking manual backups, like logging into CMDs and having to take like manual backups from databases and EC2 instances. So we also needed to make sure that our new solution on the cloud was being controlled and tight on budget. So we needed to be on top of that as well. And we, as I said, needed to eliminate like time-consuming and intensive tasks from our architects and also our engineers. Now let's talk about the decision from LifeMiles to actually choose Druva. One of the initial things that we did was go out there and see different players in the AWS picture, and we found a few of them, and we started doing some POCs, and we had to do 3 POCs, so that was also time consuming. We immediately found that Druva was really easy to install on our environment. We weren't looking for another server to maintain, another server to be patching and updating. So when we saw that with Druva, you had the chance to just leverage a CloudFormation stack, that was a huge surprise, and it was very easy, like in 5 minutes to set up, right? Another thing that was really key to us was the fact that we had access to the subscription through the AWS marketplace. That's something that really simplifies all the procurement process. We don't have to register a new vendor. We don't have to sign a contract with involve the legal team. So those things are really time consuming, at least from our side. And having this option that we can just charge this on our AWS bill is fantastic. And we don't have to install any agents. That's some other benefits that we have. So usually with the legacy solutions, you have to install an agent on each server that you want to back up. In this case, it's native to the AWS solution. With the CloudFormation stack, you get access to all of your EC2, RDS instances, and other resources that you need to back up. This brings down the total cost of ownership, of course, because you have all this added value, including the server schedules. That's something that we were not looking for initially to cover with this solution, but we found it, and it really made a huge impact on our business, and it was a key factor on our decision making. It also brings another module that we were not expecting to see out of the box. The DR readiness. This is for disaster recovery. We know that we can implement a disaster recovery plan using Druva Cloud Ranger, and it'll be integrated with the backups that is already taken. And lastly, there is a very nice experience that we've had with customer support. Normally, support will, when you have problems and you identify like feature requests, support will just grab your request and tell you that they will pass it on to developers and evaluate the possibility of implementing it. But with Druva, what we've experienced at least is like very tight relationship with support. It feels very personalized. Each time you open a ticket, the agents will follow up proactively and make sure that your issue is resolved every time. And when the issue cannot be resolved like immediately through the support ticket, they will escalate to developers. And if a feature request comes up from this request, they will pass it along. And sometimes we've even received communication from developers. And I've actually communicated with Ronald actually, and he was very nice to explain to me which feature requests were possible to implement, which ones didn't make sense. He was really honest with me about these needs or suggestions that LifeMiles had, and that really created a real tight bond with support and customer. So what did we get as a solution with Druva Cloud Ranger? We were able to natively back up our servers. These servers contain a lot of important systems, the LifeMiles systems, like our booking engine, our core system, which handles all the customer transactions, like I mentioned before. We have all of our tooling, internal tooling for DevOps, for security, and for infrastructure automation. These are all on EC2 instances and are being backed up with Druva Cloud Ranger. We can automatically start and stop our resource schedules. So that is something really nice. As I mentioned, it was something that we weren't expecting. We were coming from a data center architecture and moving to a cloud solution. That's where another need came up to start saving money on those non-productive environments that normally on a data center solution, they will stay up all night, all weekend, 24/7. But now that we're on the cloud, we have this opportunity to optimize the cost and just turn them on business hours when they're actually being utilized. And finally, we also have a very important feature, or a couple of features that we didn't actually evaluate initially, but we actually learned that we needed them when we were on an audit. They were doing a manual check of the tool to see what were the security measures, what were the security implementations that they had, protocols, and they were asking all of these questions to us, and surprisingly, we were able to answer them positively. For example, when they asked us if we had SSO integration, because we have an SSO IDP, we immediately said yes. We have implemented it. Actually, I have a side story to that. We have this identity provider that is not officially supported by Druva, but we submitted a ticket, and they saw the opportunity to integrate it. They did it quickly, and we were able to set SSO for our business, right? So that's also great experience with support. And in terms of MFA, that's also important. Of course, we need to make sure that our users, even if their credentials are compromised, they have a second authentication factor to prevent unauthorized access. So these features gave our security team, confidence that our backups are being held securely with Druva Cloud Ranger. Now let's talk a little bit about our stats. This actually surprised me because we started with just a handful of resources being protected with Druva Cloud Ranger, but as we grew on the AWS cloud, we started seeing these numbers go up. Now we're up to 150 resources protected with Druva Cloud Ranger. These are spread across 6 AWS accounts on 2 different regions. So our backups that are on our primary region are also copied over to our secondary and DR disaster recovery solution region, right? So that's something else that it's really nice from Druva, that it lets you seamlessly do these copies. You don't have to worry about doing them manually. And we're covered on 6 different resource types. As I said before, we initially started with just RDS and EC2 instances, but as we grew into this AWS ecosystem, we started using EBS volumes, EC2 RDS. We also used DynamoDBs and DocumentDB databases as well, and S3 buckets, of course. So finally, we have 2 additional important factors, and these are a 95% reduction in time spent managing our backups. We saw our engineers and our administrators being able to use this time that they save from creating AWS Lambda functions to manage the backups, and if they fail, you need to go through logs. And now we move to a solution that does this for us automatically. And if it fails, you don't have to run the entire policy again and have like duplicate backups, because when it fails, it'll let you just go to your logs and just pick up from where it left off. Try to retry the failed backup. And if it succeeds, and it'll just finish where it left off. So it's really nice, and they now can use this free time to invest it in other critical tasks. And we also saw a 60% reduction in our AWS costs due to the resource schedules, and also the methodology that Druva Cloud Ranger uses to make backups. Like, it reutilizes the backups that you're taking with the grandfather, father, son approach. And when we talk about resource schedules, we saw this 60% reduction because, as I said, we were using non-productive environments 24/7, and now we were able to set them on a Monday to Friday, 8 to 8 schedule, which brings us down to a 40%, real use of those resources. With that, that's all I have to say for now. Let me give it back to Rana.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that wonderful insights. It's always good to hear a customer derive value out of Druva's solutions. With that, let's look at some of the capabilities that Jonathan talked about and see what Druva's solution is all about. So if you look at your AWS environments to begin with, and you look at the resources that you have out there, Druva solutions starting with your compute, whether it's your EC2 instances, your underlying storage, whether it's your EBS volumes, or for that matter, if you're using AWS as Outpost, or if you have VMware running on AWS, irrespective of any of these environments in which you have your resources running, you could also have databases. They could be AWS native databases, whether it's an RDS, a document DB, or a Neptune DB, or even DynamoDB. Or even if you have a way in which you're running an instance with Oracle or SQL inside it, or we have a solution to safeguard against it. A few weeks back, we also launched announced support for Amazon's EKS and Kubernetes. And that's just keeping in trend with the changes that we are seeing from our customers with the growing need of adoption of Kubernetes. How do we protect applications out there? So if that's something of interest, we do have a session also that you can check out where we talk more in detail about the Kubernetes support that we announced. Now, if you look at the capabilities that we offer on Druva's cloud platform against these resources that we protect, starting with the ability to do backups and recoveries, whether it's a database or a volume, you have the capabilities to do that. In the event you need to be prepared for a disaster and be ready for a business continuity plan, right from creating your disaster recovery sites to having a plan that you can orchestrate in event of a disaster, we offer these out-of-the-box capabilities. And lastly, as a part of your need to store data for longer-term purposes, we offer effective ways to archive data or retain data for longer-term purposes, and also be able to search on that data at any point of time if you need to recover the data. So that's in a nutshell the capabilities that we offer as a part of Druva's solution. With that, let's look at each of these capabilities and understand them better. At the heart of Druva's solutions, we have what we call as a backup policy. Now, if you look at your AWS environments, and as I was saying earlier, one of the challenges that you'd see is with your environment starting to grow, you could be adding more and more AWS accounts under it. You could be adding more and more resources. But when it comes to taking a data protection strategy, what you really want to do is to simplify the need or way in which you want to protect your resources. And that's where we offer what we call as a cross-account or a global backup policy, where a policy allows you to define based on your RPO requirements, a schedule or a frequency in which you want to back up. The second part is around retaining your data. If you want to retain your data for longer term purposes, how do you do that effectively? How do you store your daily copies, your monthly copies, your yearly copies, having that effective governance retention option as a part of a policy. You could also have disaster recovery needs where you want to park an additional copy of your data into another AWS account or another AWS region. And this policy provides you the flexibility to do that. Sitting along with this policy is the ability to pick your resources. We provide a unified way in which you can do that, where you can use a rule-based approach to say, protect all my AWS accounts that I have. I'm only interested in the databases like an RDS to be protected. Or for that matter, you could use AWS tags if that's something that you have in your environment. And you could simply say, all servers that meet a particular tag, those are the resources I'm looking to protect. And lastly, if you are in a more ad hoc purpose environment where you don't have an effective tag-based approach, but you really want to be protecting at a larger environment scale, you could simply go by network options by saying use my VPC, use my subnet to protect the resources that you have. With this policy set in place, once this policy is defined, any new resources that come up in your environment, you don't have to really update your policy. This simplified approach of having a policy to bring management and governance and ensure that you have a holistic data protection to protect your resources is one of the key areas that we offer from a backup perspective. The second is, looking at your databases that you have out there. So you could have an instance running with Oracle or SQL. And, if you're looking for a way to safeguard that, available on Druva's cloud platform is a solution to take the data to Druva's cloud, where we can do what we call as a global dedupe and incremental behavior, where the data is backed up to Druva's cloud, and you have granular recovery capabilities to recover your database at any point in time. So having custom databases running in your application, in your environment, you also have a way to safeguard against it from both a disaster recovery scenario and also from a tactical perspective of, you want to recover a point in time copy or a latest snapshot in event of a loss of data. Now, the real value comes when you lose your data and you need to really go back and quickly recover it. Depending upon your need of recovery, whether you're looking for an instance to be recovered back or an underlying volume to be recovered back, or if you have a database that you want to go back to a point-in-time copy, we offer out-of-the-box simple ways to do that. The more critical area that we often hear customers bring to us is the loss of a file, a team or a member, having a particular file on a system, and the file gets accidentally deleted or the file is no longer available. Now, in order to recover a file from an EBS snapshot, what you're probably going to do is you're going to take that, go ask the user, when did you last see this particular file, and then find a nearby snapshot or a point-in-time copy where this particular file could have existed. And from there, you want to take a snapshot, you want to create a volume out of it, you want to take that volume, attach it to a temporary instance, and then hope that that file exists in it to make it available to the user. Where we offer a value and a simple way to do that is to take all these steps and abstract that out under the hood in an automated manner, where you can simply pick a snapshot and say, I want to recover a particular file from it. And what we will do is create a volume out of that snapshot, attach it to a temporary instance, and make that instance available for the user to access. We also add an FTP and SCP capabilities. So if the users need to log in and copy that file, they can do that. Or if they just want to access it via the web, a nice web link is also provided with it. It's just ease of use when it comes to, when you're looking at it from a recovery standpoint, the hours that you spend in support trying to figure out and provide a file that we provide as a simplified way from a data protection standpoint. So we talked about backup and recovery, and we also mentioned that when it comes to archival purposes, or you need to hold data for long-term purposes, what are the ways you could take an effective strategy? One of it is with the backup policy, where you could have a tiered retention model to effectively archive data for longer-term purposes, your yearly and monthly copies. However, if you look at an EBS snapshot costs roughly about 5 cents a GB a month. Now, if you have a need to park that data for long-term purposes, maybe for multi-years as a part of a compliance obligation, then you effectively want a tiered way in which you can move that to a cheaper storage. So we have launched a capability to take an EBS snapshot as a part of the Cloud Ranger capabilities and effectively move that into an S3 bucket in your account, into any of the S3 storage classes that you have available in it. So think of it, an EBS snapshot that's probably about 5 cents a GB. You can take that snapshot, you need to retain that maybe for 7 years or 10 years. Simply being able to take an existing snapshot and say, move that snapshot to Glacier or Deep Archive, where it roughly costs about $1 a TB a month is in terms of savings that you can derive. So that's one of the areas that we have also added as a part of our archival support, so that existing snapshots can be moved out in an effective way and stored in your account for longer term purposes. Now, we talked about file recovery being a critical part of it. But when it comes to recovery purposes also, searching for a file within a snapshot can be very, very cumbersome, because you really don't know if a file particularly exists. And then often at times what you need to do is approximate which snapshot or which point in time could have a particular file and a version. And what we have heard constantly from our customer base is, is there an effective way in which we could dramatically reduce the amount of time users spend in a support engagement to try and recover a file? So what we have done with our Druva solution is to really take the backups that you have, index the backups index the snapshots at post the backup creation, and that way your file information, which is a part of your EBS volumes, you have a nice metadata index that is maintained in your account. So every snapshot that is getting created, you can actually have an index based off that snapshot. Now, with that index in place, at any point of time, if you're looking to recover a file, all you have to do is go to the product console that's there on Druva side and simply say, I'm looking for a file. Maybe the file starts with DXP, or for the file name starts with cloud. And what we are going to do at this point of time is, under the hood, look at all the snapshots available in the account. You don't even have to worry about where the snapshot resides. Anywhere in the account, we're going to look at all the index snapshots and give you the list of files that match it. You have various attributes you can do to search for a particular file. It's not only that, but you might have different versions of a file that you want to recover against. And our search result will come back and tell you all the versions that we have identified for the file. You can click on a particular version of the file that you're looking to recover, and we will show you all the underlying snapshots where this particular file is there. And with that experience itself, you've reduced a significant amount of time just looking for a file. But the capabilities don't end there. Ultimately, you want to recover the file. And by simply using a download option available within the console from that search result, we will actually go take the snapshot, mount it, attach it to an instance, traverse the file, fetch the file, and put it in an S3 bucket in your account, and provide you a simple link for you to go and get that file. It's that simplicity that we bring to the table when it comes to search as a part of the product capabilities that dramatically reduces the need of the hours spent in looking for a particular file. You could also be involved in an investigation where you're looking for a particular file on a system, and in this way of searching for a file across any of your snapshots in an account dramatically reduces the time even involved from an investigation purpose. So we talked about sites, but when we look at it from a business continuity purposes, and if you're looking at it from an AWS perspective, you probably want to have a secondary site where your data is stored, and you want to be backing up your point-in-time copies to another account or another region. As an example, if you are based out of US East, from a disaster recovery perspective, you might want to make sure your data is copied to another account and another region. So you might go to US West and create a new AWS account there. And that could be your disaster recovery site or your secondary site out there. Now, having defined that account and the region where your disaster recovery site should be, the second task that you have with it is to create that disaster recovery site. So you're going to have to look at your production environment and say, what are the network and security settings that I need to be creating in the secondary site that mimics what my applications have in the production site? So right from thinking of your VPCs to your subnets to your secondary security groups, you constantly have to create all of that in your secondary site. What we'd offer as a part of Druva solutions is really a way to simplify this entire operation of having to create a secondary site in a manual way. So with our capabilities under Druva's solutions, you can create what we call as an environment. An environment is nothing but a way in which you describe where your applications are running in terms of your network and security settings. So you can start by saying, here are the VPCs where my production environment is. Here are the security groups where maybe my EC2 instance or my RDS database is located. And that's all it takes to define an environment. With the capabilities available, using a single click operation, you can say, I want to clone this environment and create a secondary site out of it, another environment out of it. This environment could be in another AWS account. It could be in another AWS region. And what we are going to do as a part of this is to simply take all of the settings that are part of your network and security settings and automatically create that secondary site for you. Now, as we do this, and as you're aware, when you look at your AWS sites, not all regions have the same availability zones. Not all regions allow you to move the same IP addresses if you change regions. It's all these complexities that we automatically handle as a part of the clone operation that is available with the product capabilities. An additional area that we often hear customers bring up to us is when you're looking to minimize the impact of changes to production, you might want to have an environment that closely mimics your production just to test a critical fix. With this environment capability, you can seamlessly click on an existing production environment through Cloud Ranger and say, create for me a secondary site where I can quickly test out a change that closely mimics what my production environment would look like, make sure it's working there, and then push the changes to production. So you have that added flexibility with a secondary site option. So we talked about how easy and simple it is to create a disaster recovery site. We looked at the backup policies, which should ensure that based on your app RPO requirements, the snapshots, whether it's your EC2 instances or your RDS instances, are copied across another account or another region or wherever you're looking to hold your DR environment. We also offer the ability to set up disaster recovery plans. Disaster recovery plans could be set up based on your applications. And what these disaster recovery plans allow you to do is just to define a strategy or a plan which says, based on my RPO requirements, based on my RTO requirements, here is what my environment looks like, and I want this plan to be ready. So in the event something goes wrong, you have an effective way to simply do a one-click operation and say failover to the secondary site. Having this disaster recovery plan designed upfront and allowing you to test that periodically through the product is an added value that we also offer. So you now also have a way to define a plan. With that plan, you can actually test and see if there's a failover situation, what that environment would look like. And you can also do that in an automated manner through our solution, where you can say, this is a plan, I want this to be automatically tested once a month. And not only that, but get an out-of-the-box report that if you need to share for audit purposes or compliance purposes to demonstrate that you had actually tested your disaster recovery readiness. So it's that end-to-end part of looking from a disaster recovery perspective, readiness perspective, that we also bring to as a part of Druva's solution to simplify the overall time and effort that's involved when you're looking for an effective way to safeguard your AWS environments. Now, Jonathan talked earlier about significant savings when you look at your AWS environment, especially in terms of how your resources are used. As with the first dynamics that you look from a cloud perspective, everything is in a subscription model. So you effectively pay for all the resources as long as they're running and being utilized. Now, an area that we have seen often is, you might have different teams. You might have maybe a development teams or non-production teams, and maybe you don't need servers or to be running post certain periods of hours. But rather than going and telling each of those users, please shut down your servers when you don't need it, what you would like to do ideally is to set up a policy which basically says, servers that meet a particular condition, whether it's a tag, that meet this particular tag, maybe it's your development servers, I only want those servers to be running at 7 o'clock in the morning, but by evening 7 p.m. they should be shut down. Next day morning before the team comes in, I want these servers to be up and running. So being able to do that in a policy approach with Druva's solution, again, where you can set up what we call as resource schedules. That way you can define, when your resources should be coming on, when your resources should be coming on. And as we heard from Jonathan, having these policies in place can effectively and simply bring down your cost of your cloud operations. The last area that when we look at it from a holistic approach of data protection, your AWS environments could have even VMware running on it, VMware on cloud or via VMC. And you might have a hybrid environment between an on-premise and cloud with VMC running out there. And as a part of Druva's solutions, we also offer a way to safeguard the VMs running in VMware. It's on the VMCs itself. You could back those up to Druva's cloud without an agent sitting on those machines. Take a copy of data, have that incrementally stored, and also ensure that, in event of a disaster recovery, the copies are isolated from your production environment and recover it at any point of time. So it's that holistic approach of bringing, irrespective of your environments, having a comprehensive way to look at your AWS environments and safeguard against it that we offer as a part of our overall solution. So to summarize, what are the capabilities that we looked at? Druva solutions are all designed as 100% cloud native. And what we mean by that is when we talk of cloud native is we have architected all of these solutions in AWS to be a SaaS-based offering using AWS's underlying native services, where we get the best of the flexibility and the scalability that's available with the cloud to use these services as it is, so that if your environment scale up and you have a multi-tenant environment, these cloud native capabilities are available, are the way we have looked at it from a solution perspective. We talked about backup policies, which effectively provide a way to simplify your data protection. So you can set up backup policies and know that as your environment scales out, or with more accounts coming in, or for that matter, different teams and different resource types coming in, you don't really need to do anything different, but have these policies ensuring that your environment is protected. We also discussed about DR capabilities. So if you need to set up a disaster recovery site, you don't have to go to the pain of manually creating your VPCs, subnets that mimic your production environment. You can use a single click operation to create a secondary site. And also from a compliance perspective, if you're looking for a way to demonstrate your disaster recovery capabilities, having a DR plan that you could orchestrate and show results against is a capability that we also discussed. The last area is around the cost optimization. Now, if you're looking at everything in the cloud, right from the infrastructure that you're running in an environment, the last thing you want is to have yet another infrastructure to manage. With our solution being a SaaS-based offering, you really don't have any underlying infrastructure from a data protection perspective that you need to be running in your account. And that itself is the first way in which you bring down your cost of ownership. Second is we talked about the effective retention controls that you could do to make sure that the underlying snapshots that you're getting created in your account are also cleaned up and reduced and optimally stored, so that you also lower your AWS bill. And we also discussed about the resource scheduling capabilities, which can also help you ensure that your resources are optimally shut down when you don't really need it, to safeguard against unnecessary bills that you could incur with it. So these are some of the things that we discussed today from an overall perspective as to why Druva solutions can help and provide an effective way when it comes to taking a data protection strategy for your AWS environments. With that, if everything you heard today is of interest to you, you would like to learn more, you can request for a demo. If you're interested to start a trial, you can head over to druva.com and request for a free trial out there. We offer free trials to look at our product, test it out, and ask as many questions as you want. And additionally, we are also available on AWS Marketplace. If you just want to get started from there, you could go to the AWS Marketplace and look for Druva there to get started with. With that, on behalf of Jonathan, I would like to thank Jonathan for sharing this wonderful insights, and to you for attending this session. We hope you found this informative.
All right, excellent presentation. Thank you so much to the experts at Druva. Thank you, Rono. And thank you, of course, to Jonathan as well from LifeMiles. Thank you for sharing your story. A really great webinar. We had so many questions come in. I know the experts from Druva have been rapidly responding electronically or as quickly as possible, and they'll continue to do so. So thank you so much for your questions. Obviously, this is a solution that a lot of you out there are very excited about. Before we go, I do want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. This is going out to Kelly Siteman from Nevada. Congratulations, Kelly Siteman from Nevada. And we will select the best question winner as well, and we'll be contacting them after today's webinar. Finally, I want to remind everyone to check out the handouts there in the Handouts tab on how to add disaster recovery to your AWS environment, and also 8 tips to simplify AWS backup and recovery. And I mean, as Rono said, check out Druva in the AWS Marketplace, and also visit druva.com and sign up for the free trial for yourself. It sounds like a fantastic solution that could help so many companies out there to simplify their data protection. And with that, it's time to wrap up today's event. Again, thank you so much and have a great day. We'll see you next time.